Hey guys, LevelCap here and welcome to another episode of This Week in Gaming, the new show where we cover all things FPS. On Tuesday, DICE revealed the next 3 Battlefield 1 expansions, featuring a Russian DLC, Naval DLC, and a more mysterious one named Apocalypse. Check the video link in the description for more information on each of those DLCs. DICE also revealed the launch date for They Shall Not Pass. The French-themed expansion pack drops on the 14th for Premium Pass owners. The DLC will then be available for purchase on its own 2 weeks later. A Reddit user has already figured out one of the new guns coming to Battlefield 1 based on this image from the DLC reveal. Gecko Guy determined we'll see the Parabellum MG14 as a new support weapon in the game's Russian-themed DLC. The MG14 was originally designed to be mounted on aircraft with a gun synchronizer developed by the renowned Dutch aviation engineer Anthony Fokker. The machine gun fired at 600 to 700 rounds per minute and was belt-fed, so it'll be interesting to see how it fits with the other LMGs in Battlefield 1. Most of BF1's LMGs are fired at around 500 rounds per minute, with the BAR firing the fastest at 600 rounds per minute. An LMG with tons of ammo and a high fire rate could be pretty devastating in this game. Overwatch's new hero has been revealed. ORISA is a tank hero with a rapid-fire automatic gun, a graviton charge that slows and pulls nearby enemies, a throwable shield, the ability to boost her defense for a short time, and an ultimate that buffs teammates. Players can try out ORISA on the PTR right now. The patch that brought ORISA to the PTR also introduced some nerfs to Bastion, who has become slightly overpowered with the most recent balance update. Personally, I'm looking forward to having ORISA in Overwatch. She seems like a cool blending of Bastion and Diva. Warner Bros. Revealed an epic trailer for Middle-earth: Shadow of War, a sequel to the 2014 melee brawler Shadows of Mordor. The sequel continues the story of the first game and expands on one of its most praised features, the Nemesis system. In Shadow of Mordor, killing named enemies caused interesting changes to the ranks and abilities of other enemies. Taking out the first in command of a faction meant a lower ranked soldier would try to take their place. There were a few different ways you could interact with these power shifts, including killing whoever was making them. It was a fun system that added a lot of diversity to the gameplay. In Shadow of War, the Nemesis system has been expanded to include Nemesis Fortresses. These are dynamic strongholds that the player can take over that will have unique enemies within them. The sequel will also allow the player to have AI companion followers that aid you in combat and tie into the game's story. A gameplay reveal is scheduled to release on the 8th, with the full game dropping August 22nd. If the trailer is anything to go by, Shadow of War is going to be a top-notch AAA production. Now, if you've been hiding under a rock somewhere and you didn't hear, ZELDA Breath of the Wild released along with the Nintendo Switch this week to almost universal acclaim. The open-world Zelda title is in the top 5 Metacritic games list with a solid score of 98. Whether or not that's enough to ensure the Nintendo Switch sells like crazy is not something that we can determine yet, but I am really excited to see how this new console does. Ubisoft's massive third-person shooter Ghost Recon Wildlands has its first bit of info about its post-launch DLC released this week. Wildlands will be getting 2 expansions, 2 new missions, some faction equipment packs, and a free PvP update that will feature a 4 vs 4 game mode. Pricing for the Premium Pass is set at $40 and no release dates have been announced. Personally, I'm really excited to see what the PvP mode is like. The way Wildlands plays in co-op is a real highlight of the game for me, so getting to squad up with some friends and take on other players seems like it could actually be some fun. Then again, PvP as an afterthought is never a good sign for anybody who's actually hardcore about player versus player. Mass Effect's Andromeda multiplayer beta has apparently been cancelled by BioWare. The sci-fi action-adventure franchise is obviously known for its stellar single-player campaigns, but the third game's multiplayer was very well regarded. With all the hype for Andromeda, it's disappointing we won't get any hands-on time with it until release. Andromeda's multiplayer is supposedly more integral to the single-player experience than it has been in past titles. The cancellation certainly does bring a little bit of concern to whether or not the game is actually going to be finished in time for release. We'll just have to wait and see. GEARBOX showed off some new Borderlands tech that may or may not be Borderlands 3. The sequel to the wildly successful 2012 title has been hotly anticipated by fans ever since they mentioned it was under development at the Battleborn launch event. GEARBOX demoed the new tech they're developing for upcoming titles this week at Game Developer Conference, and it looks pretty cool. Borderlands is known for its distinct outline art style, and the new tech looks like a more refined version of what we've seen in previous titles. The Kickstarter-funded remake of the classic game System Shock has had a new trailer drop this week. It was part of an update post on the game's Kickstarter page detailing development since the pre-alpha game demo was released on Steam. The biggest announcement was that the game will be built in the Unreal Engine 4 instead of Unity. This is mainly due to the technical limitations of Unity and its inferior console support compared to Unreal Engine 4. The trailer itself represents a vertical slice of the intended product and isn't from a finalized level or anything like that. Even so, it looks really good. A lot has changed since System Shock was released in 1994, and many of the classics haven't held up so well, mostly due to their original tech limitations. The System Shock remake so far looks like a pretty faithful adaptation with modernized graphics and gameplay mechanics. The open-world survival shooter Escape from Tarkov received an update to its closed beta. The biggest new feature is the addition of the Scavs class. Players can enter PvP as a Scav with random equipment and weapons. They act as their own faction, and picking them doesn't overwrite your existing character. Surviving a match lets you keep any gear you find and then transfer that to your dedicated character. This alleviates some of the extremely high-risk aspects of playing in PvP and also provides a less frustrating way for new players to become familiar with multiplayer. The idea is that once you become more comfortable with the extremely harsh environment of multiplayer, you may be more willing to bring better gear from your main character to improve your looting odds. We will have to see how this affects the overall trends in player versus player. The tactical shooter Squad is getting an update to Alpha version 9 this month that adds the Minx 400 motorbike as a drivable vehicle. Alpha version 9 will be the first major update to the game since 8.9 last December. The update brought a ton of new vehicles and content to the game. With the Minx 400 being the first newly announced content in the Alpha version 9, I'm sure we'll be getting a lot more info about the update soon. The upcoming fantasy melee brawler Mirage Arcane Warfare will be getting a closed beta starting on March 27th for people that pre-ordered the game. The closed beta will remain online until shortly before the game's full release. Mirage is being developed by the folks who did Chivalry, so it's sure to be a fun and quirky game. The arcadey arena shooter DESYNC launched this week, and it's getting solid reviews. It features fast-paced action and a distinctly future retro art style. Fans of Bulletstorm's creative kill reward system will feel right at home in DESYNC, as the zanier your kills, the more points you'll rack up. The Division received its final expansion this week, Last Stand. The expansion dropped alongside the 1.6 free update and brought a tons of tweaks and changes to the game. Finally, having a dedicated PvP game mode will be great news for players that stuck with it since launch. The Dark Zone was always a troubled part of this world. It was the most interesting and rewarding aspect of the game, but also the most frustrating and broken. Last Stand and Update 1.6 do a lot to improve things, especially if you enjoy PvP, but I don't think it's enough to bring back a large player base. Milsim fans who somehow managed to avoid buying any of the ARMA games until now should be excited to hear the latest Humble Bundle includes them all for $15. That is a huge savings considering ARMA 3 alone is $40. If you've been on the fence about ARMA or just haven't had the money to get into the franchise, this bundle is the way to go. I'll leave a link in the video description, so be sure to check that out. Microsoft has taken after Netflix and is launching a program for $10 a month that includes 100 games. Xbox Game Pass lets owners download full Xbox One and backwards compatible Xbox 360 titles to play for as long as they pay the monthly fee. It doesn't get much better than this when it comes to game deals. Microsoft haven't announced the full list of the 100 games yet, but all the top titles appear to be in it, like Halo 5 and Gears of War Ultimate Edition. No specific date has been revealed, but Microsoft says the service will launch later this spring. Twitch TV is looking to get into the game retailer business by launching their own game store later this spring. Links to purchase games via the Twitch store will be displayed below relevant streams. Partnered streamers will collect 5% of each sale made from their links on their channel. So far, the program is set to include titles from Telltale, Devolver Digital, and even Ubisoft, among other publishers. While I'm not looking forward to installing yet another game client, I'm sure this will be hugely successful for Twitch. NVIDIA has finally announced the rumored GTX 1080 Ti GPU. The $700 monster of a GPU is set to outperform NVIDIA's top-of-the-line $1,200 Titan X Pascal. The 1080 Ti is huge news for 4K gaming enthusiasts, as it's really the first of its kind of affordable or semi-affordable 4K GPUs on the market. NVIDIA also announced a price cut of $100 on the GTX 1080, knocking it down to $500. Rumors are circulating that a similar price cut is in store for the GTX 1070, which is probably the best bang for your buck in the GPU market right now. The Oculus Rift's price dropped this week to $598, making it the cheapest premium VR headset on the market. Oculus also dropped the price of its touch controllers to $99. The company is offering a combo package that includes both the Rift headset and touch controllers for $600 total. I wouldn't call that affordable by any stretch, but it's the first step towards a premium VR experience being something everyone can get their hands on. Hopefully this puts the pressure on HTC to lower the price of the Vive, which is currently at $800. With the launch of the Nintendo Switch, we've finally gotten some proper reviews of the new console's various peripherals, including the Pro Controller. Interestingly, the Pro Controller works on the PC via Bluetooth. On launch, it appears that the Bluetooth headphones don't work with the Switch. The console does have a standard headphones port though, so if you have a long enough cable, you can still use the headphones while playing on a TV. A more notable issue with the Switch is the game saves can't be transferred from one console to another. You can migrate your account and games to new hardware, but your saves are stuck on the original device. Game cartridges for the Switch don't save your data, so there's no way to keep your progress if you change consoles, even if you have the physical media. My guess is Nintendo will eventually make saves transferable somehow, but they haven't announced anything yet. In our final story this week, it sounds like the Oculus exclusive title Robo Recall is a hit with reviewers. The futuristic action shooter was lauded as a premium VR experience by the developers, and early reviewers of it often went along the lines of, "This is what makes VR worth buying." The game is built from the ground up for VR and features gameplay that works specifically because it's actually in VR. This year really seems like the start of VR games living up to the promises the devs have been making since the Rift was first revealed years ago. Anyway, that concludes today's episode of This Week in Gaming. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap signing off.